Hi guys, I'm Professor Harley,
I'm Dr. Kev,
and this is Car Design Workshop.
and this is our mock-up. So I said on the channel before, pretty big fans of using mock-ups to help visualize how we're building cars, and this is something we've been working on for a little bit. A lot of work still to go, but it gives us a bit of an idea of what it's like to sit in what's going to become Project 171.
Started with the MDF box that you're looking at, and we kind of built it out from there.
Yeah, I think when we first put this together, we just had the platform, and the first thing it did when we went to sit on it was collapse. So,
Even the seat was made from MDF, if you recall, Dr. Kevin.
yeah, well, we've actually got these seats now. These are the seats we're intending to run in the project. They're Velo seats, so they're manufactured in Australia. They're an ADR compliant seat, and they're very light. And we get an idea of, you know, the steering needs to be shifted over a little bit, but overall, we can get an idea of visibility and I guess size of the car.
Yeah, and we've actually manufactured essentially the entire steering system in terms of functionality and mapped that along to the chassis. So you would have seen the rack video that we produced a few months ago. That was getting ahead of some of the steering rack design. I think it was a GR86 rack that we've used for that, and the Subaru.
But for the left-hand.
The left-hand drive
Left-hand
American
drive
version. Yep.
Yeah, if you want to check that video out, there was some really good discussion between Harley and the guy that was going to sell it to us, where they didn't really want to sell us that rack. But that's there. That used to actually be mounted to this, but we had 3D printed mounts and
We had some 3D printed structural issues.
Yeah.
We'll resolve those in the final variant, of course.
yeah, you don't really want to see all the things going wrong with this, but I think the value of mock-ups is not to have it perfectly as it would be in the final car. I think that's just maybe even too much of a waste of time. It's just to try and get something quick. So we'd rock up on an evening, just try and spend a couple of hours on it to maybe just build a bit of complexity into it, just to get an idea for the shape of it.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. You might also spot a little Easter egg in the background, which is something Kevin and I have been working on, the dash and the design for this, which is mocked up in part in this chassis too.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where it is in the background, but we'll do a video on that in a little bit more detail in the future. We've also just recently started to do some of the bodywork cutouts. So we got in the back over there, you'll see that there's a CNC router. We've been slowly ticking away, putting that together. It hasn't been running for very long, but it's enabled us to cut out some of these stations just to get an idea for the size of the car and how we might go about making a buck when it comes time to build the bodywork. Still learning how to use that. Also got to update the head on that one, getting a bit more power into that, but it's worked pretty well.
Yeah. It's helped us to dream this into existence, which has informed a lot of those ongoing design decisions as we develop the CAD model.
I think some of this was before we had the CNC router working. We were doing this just using a table saw and a track saw. So it's a little bit rough and ready, but it gave us an idea. And already, as we've followed some of the aerodynamic design that's come out in the latest videos, a lot of these dimensions are changing anyway. So didn't really worry us if it wasn't perfect at the time. So what are some of the things I think that you've found when we've done this that have been supported? I guess what we thought the car was going, or some things that we've changed as a result?
I think one was definitely moving towards something closer to a space frame in terms of the chassis design. The more you look at the sort of nodal freedom you get with that design, particularly in the front end and the rear, the way that the engine is going to be mounted, it starts to point towards creating these shapes with tubes rather than trying to build something up from carbon, as cool as that would be.
Yeah, I think you're trying to get your own agenda here. You've always been team space frame from day one.
I've said that from day one.
Yeah, so when we were doing this, it was still modeled up with a little bit towards what our monocoque would look like. But we probably are leaning towards a space frame just because I think we want to get out testing earlier.
Yeah.
And now that the car has actually we've got the permission from Department of Transport to go ahead with this car. So originally it's got a 2-year time limit on that can be extended, but I don't even want to take 2 years. I want to get this thing on the road a lot sooner than that.
But I think if I was giving a slightly more serious answer, I would probably say ergonomics is a massive one. If you start to look at where your gear shifter might sit, where the steering wheel is going to sit. I know we've spent a lot of time looking at distances, where your feet are going to sit. So pedal box arrangements. We've talked about the steering system. That's resulted in multiple design changes. So I think that's probably the best example I can point to.
And even these seats, so when we first started, we got seats out of a wrecker that were just some mock-up seats, but they didn't get low enough. And we really just kept our eye out for some seats that were coming up. We weren't sure exactly about buying something online and getting that delivered. And in Perth, there's not really a lot of places to go and check out new seats. So we kept an eye out, these came up, and they're almost perfect for what we want. They're nice and low, and that was really important because as soon as you're up a little bit in the
wing
chassis,
test.
Yeah, and it's tight in here, but it's not ridiculously tight. It actually feels like there's a fair bit of space, and I feel like that. So this is why we did it, for the ergonomics, just to see that we hadn't made any stupid mistakes. Like that the car wasn't just so small that you wouldn't get two people in it, or that it wasn't so large that you're just needlessly adding weight. And I think it's actually worked out pretty well. We've got to go a little bit out. The seats had to be separated a little bit from what we thought. The steering wheel is going to have to shift over a little bit, but we're talking, yeah, I made 20 mil, 30 mil on the steering wheel from what it was designed. So
Fairly small changes.
yeah, and I think lengthwise in the car, I was concerned that maybe it was a bit short, but you can't see it from outside, but inside there's a lot of space here. There's a lot we can do with structure on the chassis, and up at the front, we can lose a lot of height on that top corner, which is going to be really important because when we were doing those aero analysis, the radiator flow, we really need to chop that front corner off. So that's going to work.
Yeah.
Now, Harley went away with the 3D printer and you printed out a bunch of these corners for the roll hoop.
PVC roll hoop, structurally sound.
Yep, nice and strong. But we've had this at different heights, haven't we? So
Experimented a little bit with that.
yeah, so we've had side-on shots. We've showed that in previous videos where Harley's been sitting at it and we've been working on that height. We're not going to be with the roll hoop 100% cams compliant as a race car. This is not as a race car, but we do want it to be safe. So we want it at least above the head. We haven't shown here in the chassis video the structure at the front, but that's probably a big change, this front to...
Yeah, and we're missing some of that windshield arrangement here. This section is going to be a little bit different. Yeah. So don't add us in terms of structural issues that you can see at the visual level at this stage of the mock-up.
Yeah, I think we got some comments about, because we had a bit of PVC pipe running from here down to the top of the steering wheel, and certainly people commented that, oh yeah, the steering wheel is not a structural member, and no, we weren't using the steering wheel as a roll hoop, but we were just trying to figure out what actually got clearance to Harley's head, and it ends up being about here, which is where one of the big changes we've made in the model is we lifted the dash up a little bit. Even though this height that we originally had is enough to clear feet and knees and so on, it wasn't enough to fit a dash in. So that distance there that we're seeing from that point to that point, the roll hoop structure will be there. So you're going to end up with really this not going as quickly down there. It's going to meet up to about this point, which is good clearance.
You'll have more than you would in an MX-5 with the sports bar.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the latest video, we're looking at even modifying this into more like twin roll hoops rather than one main roll hoop. We're still experimenting, not 100% sold on what we've got here. Really, we just want to try and get this as low as we can while still being safe.
It's another big part of it, right? Being able to experiment with aesthetics, change things fairly quickly. You can get a bit of CAD vision looking just at the computer constantly. So printing something out, popping it on, see how it works, see how it looks. It's a really interesting part of the design process, I think.
Yeah, I think we should hop out and walk around the car now, and
100%.
We'll probably cut 100%.
100%.
We'll probably cut away from us getting out because we look like really old men hopping out of something this low.
Speak for yourself, Dr. Kevin.
Yeah, I definitely look like an old man hopping out of this, but you groan and grunt like an old man.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you definitely do. We're gonna cut right here. Yeah, well, maybe we won't. One area that we've got to probably work on in the chassis is the space behind these seats for fuel tank and maybe a battery or whatever. It doesn't look like we've got enough space there at the moment. So we may need to space these seats forward a little bit.
Some cool examples of the CNC router work, as well as some of the progress in the front end, would be these headlights. Not an entirely complicated shape, but fairly impressive to be able to knock something like this out in, what, about a minute with the way the router's working now.
We wanted to show the lights in pretty much what their height would be. And these are the actual lights we're intending to run. So they're an LED light, they're DOT and ADR compliant, or they've got the E mark on them, so they're legal to run.
Yep, and we've had those powered up, working.
Yeah, so we've had those. And in fact, we've powered those through the ECU we intend to run, which is pretty good, because ECU, which also has a PDM attached to it, for those of you that know about your ECUs, you might have a guess at what that would be. Those have the normal running beams, daylight runnings. They've got an indicator built in, as well as the high beam. So it's a one unit, it's got the whole lot. We're not gonna need extra indicators on the car with those. Maybe we might add a side repeater light, but at the front, that's it. It's that headline unit, nothing else. So if you've been looking at some of the latest bodywork stuff and you're wondering, you know, where are the indicators? They're in the lights. The radiator, that's actually yours. What's that one from?
So that's from one of my modified BMWs. It did actually happen to meet very close to the specs that we're looking to fit onto the car. So we fabricated up some brackets and put it at about the position that we're looking to mount it. Now that might change a little bit with some of the aero work that Kev's doing in the background. Shout out to some of those videos. But it kind of helps us to see where the front end of the car might finish, and then kind of design some things like some of the cooling system that's going to have to route through this section back to the engine. Helps us to get some visualization and ultimately finish designing that front end.
We had a mock-up dash. In fact, the very first dash that we had was this. So we had an idea of where the gauges would be, and that helped us see, I guess, visibility to the gauges.
Steering wheel position as well.
Yeah, so you could actually look through the steering wheel and see where your gauges were going to be and the sort of area that was available to you. Every time we added something like that, added a radiator or added a dash, it really felt a bit more like a car every single time. But I think the absolute standout was when we've had the tyres mounted. So we put tyres on the wheels, and as soon as you've got that, you've got a much better idea of the overall size. And you know, we're ducking down because it's
little.
It's small. It's a small car.
Yeah.
I mean, if we were standing up, I don't even know if Harley's head's still in the frame there, because it is really small.
We're not giants.
Yeah,
the car is just that small.
You know, those are 15-inch wheels. They're not huge wheels. So we also have an engine that we'd mocked up. We showed that in videos in the prep, and that's at the moment got a gearbox with it that has been converted. It's a four-wheel drive gearbox that's been converted to a two-wheel drive. We're not probably going to run that gearbox. We're not rebuilding. We'll get another gearbox.
Has a checkered past, that gearbox?
We don't know the history of it. We picked that one up from a mate that had that sitting around. It originally was in a buggy. I'm not sure that I'm going to trust that's a running gearbox, but it's great as a mock-up. The engine sits on caster wheels, and we're able to wheel this into the position for filming now, and we can wheel it out of the road. It's really nice and easy to set up.
How about I show them the corner assembly?
Absolutely. 100%.
100%.
100%.
So you can see a bit of an example of some of the 3D printing and mock-up work that we've been doing here. So this is a complete representation of the corner assembly of the vehicle. So the A-arms are the correct length. You can see we've got the actual bearings sitting in the printed upright here. Steering system is fully functional. Damper is in its correct location, and it actually moves as well. The system is not 100% accurate to what a final design might look like, but it's very close, and it helps us to kind of visualize the geometry and how this might actually work in a final vehicle.
Yeah, we did take the floor on this just flat all the way through for simplicity, and we mounted the suspension on the top of that surface, on the bottom, on the lower A-arms, whereas in the original design it's actually on the bottom, just flipped underneath, but we got them at the right sort of height. Now that's an initial geometry. Haven't yet gone through what we're going to want from camber, what we're going to want from toe change. And so we've done a little bit on the steering in terms of bump steer, but until we get back on the chassis and get a good idea of what can fit and what can't, which is part of why we did this, there's still a bit more to be done there. So this is how we manufactured these wishbones. You can see it's a 3D printed ends on it, but we actually have the bearings, so ball joints there that a Lotus Elise would use. And also we can see the bushes that a Lotus Elise would use.
So you can see it's exactly the same technique we use for the roll hoop, which is a combination of PVC for straight sections and 3D printing for curved sections of the mock-up here.
And that's something we intend to do with, I guess, a mock-up of this rear frame as well. PVC is really easy to work with. Some of this can be done with steel, but every time you're working with steel rather than these plastics, it's just a little bit extra work. Everything's a little bit harder to do. So I thought we'd take this opportunity to answer a few questions or respond to a few comments that we've had on some of the videos since we last had a Q&A video or some of the feedback. So where do we want to start?
So we had some good observations from our last Q&A around some tools that we might have missed. 3D scanning was the obvious one.
Yeah.
We just forgot.
Yeah, and it's sort of crazy we forgot it because we absolutely love scanning as part of the design process. We've
several videos on it.
Yeah, we've scanned a drag car, we've scanned the wheels, we're using an engine scan, we've even scanned me.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just stuffed up. I think a 3D scanner, especially when coupled with a 3D printer, really, really useful in design, especially when you need to find bolting patterns and attaching one part to another.
Yeah.
Yeah, so absolutely we missed that. And there was something else that sort of came up, a few comments mentioned.
Yeah, the other major one was books, which I think is valid and something we're actually intending on touching on in a future video. So watch this space for that one.
Yeah, I think we think books are a fantastic source, and journal articles and just general information from suppliers. But we felt that putting that knowledge in and things like your university training, it wasn't in fitting with what we're aiming for, which was more, I guess, software and design specific tools. But absolutely, we're both avid readers when it comes to this sort of stuff and have read a lot in the past. So definitely worth its own video and maybe some sort of tier list on the useful books.
Yeah, if you like the format, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, and along with that, we had a few comments about fabrication tools and where they sat in design. So we had said that these were nice to haves, but we didn't feel that they were essential design tools. And there's a really good comment from The Biscuits and Gravy. Man, I love these names. And it says, disagree with the metal fab tools take. For under $1,000 US, you can get a basic setup with decent inverter, MIG, corded grinder, corded die grinder, corded band file, belt sander, drill press.
The list is long.
It's a long list. And I've worked in the US, I lived in the US, and absolutely the tools there and what you can get a hold of are so much cheaper than Australia. That's one part of the US that I absolutely miss, is the availability of machine tools and tools to work with. We've got most of these tools. Do you reckon $1,000 US would do it?
Well, I think if you look at pretty much everything we're sitting in here, almost none of it was made using those fabrication tools. So it's worth framing the argument first. We're talking about design tools, which you don't necessarily need even to get to this stage of the design process. But as you've said, a lot of these tools that The Biscuits and Gravy is talking about, he's costing them in US dollars. Something like a TIG welder that you would use for, say, upright fabrication or radiator fabrication here, a decent setup is in minimum $2,000, potentially more depending on what you're wanting to do, Australian. And obviously you can get a lot of those more basic tools quite cheaply, and we do have those in the workshop. I stand by the take we had in the video in terms of their requirement for the design process.
Yeah, for the design process. When it comes to the manufacture of the car, I mean, we've got a TIG welder sitting here in this workshop. We've got some fabrication tools, bandsaw, lots of grinders, sand, all of the stuff that you need to do this sort of work. Fabrication, absolutely. We don't want to have to outsource everything. We want to be doing a lot of this manufacture ourselves. It's just that when we're designing, if we want to set up, say, that suspension corner, I prefer to do it with 3D printing and PVC than to do it with steel. Maybe when we go to a rear frame, we might do some welding there because we might want it to hold together and really work on some of the mounts there. So look, I can definitely see where the biscuits and gravy lays, according to this. I can see the validity of the points there. So I'm happy to just put this one and agree to disagree, but still a big part of fabrication and design working together. Don't disagree with that. Absolutely don't disagree with that. There's a value to fabrication. And I think the real thing is whatever tools you need to get towards sort of mock-ups and trialing your designs, you want to do it. Whatever's going to get you there faster. So if you feel comfortable with fabrication tools and you can knock something up quickly in an afternoon, go for it.
It's a good point, right? Not everyone's a gun with an AC/DC pulse TIG. You know, it takes time to learn skills like that, just as it takes time to learn modeling in CAD. Not everyone is going to be able to pick up a welder and fabricate something. And some people might be quicker with that than they would be to print it or to model it up in CAD software. So whatever works for you.
Yeah, and I think even when we're working together on these cars, I've got a bit more of a background doing woodwork, and so I feel a bit more comfortable. I think woodwork and composites are fairly close to each other, so I feel really comfortable around composites and woodworking. You've got a lot more experience with metal fab.
Yeah, a bit more experience. I bring some of the TIG welder knowledge and some of the general application, and you'll see that in some of our future videos.
Yeah, and I think if we bring John Grove in, he's like a whole nother level when it comes to metal fabrication. He wouldn't even bother doing MDF. He'd probably already have the car made by now. So yeah, good comments on that, and happy to disagree on that one, but see the value in the comments that you made. Okay, so the video on tyres, that was pretty controversial, some of the comments in there. Most people thought even if we hadn't made the best choice, we'd made at least an okay choice. But there were a couple of people that thought that it was the worst choice that we could have ever made, and it invalidated anything of value that this channel has. So we've got no authority. What do you think?
No hyperbole at all there. Yeah, did we start with any authority is the real question.
No, I don't think there's any authority here. And look, I'm going to give it to is this the best tyre for a race car? Yeah, probably not. Probably not.
Yeah, which would matter if we were building a race car.
Yeah, we're not building a race car. This is going to be a road car. And, you know, I think in the past we've built, you know, Formula SAE cars, or at least I've observed you build them as an advisor.
Yeah. You used to work in motorsports?
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, the comment said I'd never seen a racetrack. You know, in fairness, I haven't worked professional motorsport for quite a long time. And most of the cars that we worked on, they were full slick tyres. They weren't cars that you put on a...
Didn't you call them real tyres before?
No, I didn't call them real tyres. Look, a couple of real things though. Availability, if you don't live in Perth, you don't really understand how remote we actually are. So the eastern states, which is, you know, that's a term that Perth people would use, the eastern states, so Melbourne and Sydney, which most people think is Australia, that's a long way away. That's thousands of kilometres away. And the actual selection of tyres in Perth is pretty limited. And if we do able to get these tyres, often we can't get them for a good cost. So something that might be $30 more expensive in a tyre over in the US, much more expensive to get it in Perth. So yeah, if we've made a mistake, we're only about $1,000, $1,500 away from putting a better set of tyres on the car. So it's not a huge cost if we have made a mistake.
Yeah, and it's silly to pretend that this car is going to roll out of this workshop and onto a racetrack to pull several Gs at a time.
Yeah.
I think anyone who's built a car before would know that there's a significantly extended period of testing the thing and getting it to run before you're even close to something like the grip of the tyres even mattering. And by that time, we'll be onto another set. So I think ultimately it's a bit of a moot point.
Yeah, and I think in fairness, I didn't really mention the cost as a big enough impact on that tyre video. I wanted to make sure that they were halfway decent tyres, but them being cheap was pretty important. You know, often when we take a race car out for the first time, we'll actually run it on second-hand tyres. And one of the things I was potentially going to do instead of getting new tyres was get a second set of worn-out tyres to run on But in the end, I thought it wasn't that expensive to get a set of these tyres. I thought they were a decent tyre. They'll be good enough for bedding the car in, working through those initial problems. So I'm not that upset with the decision. I'm sorry that we've lost any authority that the channel might have by choosing a tyre that you didn't like. But if you like getting angry at videos, then I'm sure you're going to get angry in the future. So that's okay. One thing I did think we missed out on is not paying enough attention to grassroots motorsports. It's a really good source of information, and sometimes we don't think about it as much because it is a US source, and a lot of the articles and everything are really focused on what is a very vibrant US motorsport, and particularly the amateur motorsport scene. I just need to pay more attention to it. You've checked out some of the grassroots articles and... So you're looking pretty blank there, Harley. I'm assuming that you didn't check out grassroots motorsports either.
No.
No, yeah. So it's just not on our radar as much, and that's probably because we're in one of the most remote locations in the world. So, yep, we'll check that out in future, and probably should have read some of those articles.
Thanks for the feedback.
So the latest video was about having a look at some of the modifications we made to the aerodynamic design of the car. And in particular, there were a lot of suggestions to address rear lift and some of the yaw problems that we said are going to be an issue that we need to deal with. So one of the viewers, Pedro Alegre, 6965, they were saying that in a project that they were working on, similar project, they put a lot of vortex generators. So vortex generaters, which increase the rear lift from 0 to minus 0.25, so downforce there. It's funny, that was exactly what Tom Warren had mentioned. We can fix that issue by putting vortex generators. So there you go, Pedro, you're thinking along the same lines as the next Formula One aero guy. And then I think there was another one, Toon Verbruggen. He said last time, and he stands by it, louvers on the top rear wheel arches would do wonders. So basically releasing some of the lift from the underside of the wheel wells. What do you think about louvers on a car?
I think aesthetically, it probably is not ideal for a vehicle of this design. Obviously, functionally, there's a long history of things like louvers and shark fins as aerodynamic devices. But I think this vehicle is more about maintaining that aesthetic whilst still having that aerodynamic performance. And I think there's probably some other things that we can do to improve that yaw stability. What do you think?
Yeah, I actually like louvers. I think they're pretty cool. I didn't really have them in the model to start with because they're a pain to model. So you've got to model all of that aerodynamic relief. I think around the engine bay especially, you know, louvers could be pretty cool. They are probably easier to put in aluminium than a carbon fiber or fiberglass body. I think the louvers, when they get molded in, they have that sort of rounded off look, which is not as nice. And we're probably leaning towards this being a composite body. So I don't know, but with all of these, we're going to give them a try. We're going to try some of these and see how they perform in yaw, because it is a problem that we need to solve. And now you mentioned fins. So I did mention in the video about the D-type Jaguar fins. What's your view on putting something, I guess, towards the headrest and that back area, just to add some area to the back end of the car to improve stability? What do you think about that from I guess, aesthetically, and would it be something that you'd consider?
I think aesthetically it's something we could make work, perhaps not to the same extent that you might see in some of the older Formula One cars. But I think it's not something we've looked at to date, and we've got to consider the way that the flat 4 packages into that rear end shape with the frame. But I don't think it's out of the question at all.
Yeah, I think...
Especially if it solves the performance issues.
Yeah, I think I'd be more inclined to go to something like a fin than to put a rear wing on or something like that, which probably doesn't even really fix that yaw moment problem anyway. And it's interesting that when we look at modern race cars where the weight is towards the rear and you want this high speed stability and probably want a fair bit of downforce on the front end so that you've got good turn in, they mandate fins. So at Le Mans, they mandate fins. So it's probably a solution that we can't ignore. And it was done, it comes from the 50s. So you could definitely fit it into the aesthetic. And there were suggestions of different cars, Listers and Jags and so on that had that sort of thing. So we could borrow a bit of styling from there.
Yeah, and as you've said, there's plenty of opportunity for us once we've built the frame to play around with different body styles in the rear end and different aesthetics and look at how that adjusts the performance of the vehicle.
Yeah, and I think we're moving forwards with those videos. I probably need to actually split the model apart into a front end, a mid end, and a back end so that we can make some of these changes a little bit quicker so that we can get results faster. Because remodeling the whole car each time, that's probably a bit too time consuming. So we've got another question or comment from Funky D04. You should do an episode on brakes, static bias, dynamic bias, and the effects with aero effects on braking bias. What do you think?
I think that's in the works.
Absolutely in the works. We want to really get back onto some of the suspension and move towards manufacture. So until we figure out the suspension, we can't really do much more design onto the chassis. Before we work on filling the suspension, we need to fill out that wheel well, and that means brakes. I think the thing that's been holding us back a little bit on doing the brakes is really once you start to do that design, you're going to want to get some of those components in, and brakes are pricey.
They're pricey and you want to get them right the first time.
Yeah, so definitely going to be aiming to do an episode on brakes, and I think it's a higher risk design decision than even the tyres. Tyres, if we get them wrong, we just wear through them, and then the next set of tyres we get something better. When it comes to brakes, we don't really want to be replacing them with something else. So yeah, that's coming as an episode probably pretty soon, actually, because we're going to be doing that work pretty soon.
So we've had some people point out that most of these mistakes, particularly where the bodywork design is concerned, could have been avoided if you or I had read any one of the thousands of books about aerodynamics. What do you think about that, Dr. Kevin?
Yeah, well, I haven't read thousands of books on aerodynamics. I've read a few books on aerodynamics. I'm happy to admit it's not a huge area of strength for me. I much prefer the suspension stuff and vehicle dynamics. But I've read a few aerodynamics books. But not thousands. In fairness though, big fans of reading. You know, it's great to learn from other people's mistakes, but no matter how many books I read on suspension, vehicle dynamics, aerodynamics, composites, brakes, just about any topic on cars,
There's always
engines,
something new.
There's always something new, and you know what? When it comes to actually working on the cars, still make the mistakes. Still happens, even with as much knowledge. I know that when you read through stuff on suspension particularly, a lot of the stuff that's written disagrees with each other. So which book do you actually follow? This one or this one that has a different point of view? So yeah, look, could have avoided mistakes by reading books. Did read books, still made mistakes.
Yeah. And part of the reason we post these videos is to get the feedback from you guys and potentially some of that knowledge that we can coalesce into these videos for you.
Yeah, and we do want to show the process. So with some of this, probably could have avoided some of those mistakes with a little bit more time put into a model. We go make sure that it's right, because I knew in the first run of the aero model that there were going to be some areas that were not quite right. I hadn't put radiuses on things, and I'd foolishly thought, you know, this isn't going to be that much of an issue. It was a bigger issue than what I thought, but I wanted to get it done, get the run done, put the video out there, get some feedback, and then work from that. I'm a very strong believer in fail fast. So get a simulation done, get a calculation done, and then iterate. I think the power in engineering is more with the iteration than nailing it first time.
Yeah, exactly.
So appreciate the comment, and I'll try to read more of those thousands of books.
Me too.
Now, for the last thing that we want to address is there were a lot of comments about the aesthetics of the car. So I think some people, and I think most people, thought that the change to the design of the car actually made it a little bit better, and I think so too. It was slightly better. There's still stuff that I'm not happy about. I think there was one comment in particular that said it's looking, every video looks more and more like an MG midget, and I was like, oh no, I do like the MG midgets, but I don't want to make this car an MG midget. Maybe a mid-engine midget. But great comments. Really enjoy you guys getting excited and interested in the project. And I think there was one in particular, I think Jeremy Malik 3000 had mentioned a little feedback from a production car designer here. And I can't read through the whole lot, but there was absolute gold in there. So there was things about, not sitting the car flat and putting a bit of rake in it. Yeah, absolutely. Fully intend to rake the car so that it doesn't look flat. And it would be good for aerodynamics. It's almost certainly going to help the balance a little bit. Again, the only reason I haven't done it is modeling it flat. And it was really interesting to see in those comments that those car designers, that you were modeling things flat and then pitching it afterwards. So really cool. I didn't know how people were doing this in a production car sense. So.
Yeah, and I think some of the feedback on the roll hoop was great. Looking at perhaps a twin style aerodynamic roll bar setup is something we'd definitely be wanting to explore in the future.
Yeah, I thought with the aero profile on the roll hoop, I wasn't expecting it to look considerably different. I thought, look, there's still largely going to be a hoop there. It's still probably going to look a little bit awkward, but I was surprised at how much it improved that area and aesthetic. So I think that one's almost going to be a lock-in and do a little bit more detail. I think there's a lot there that can be done around this region of the mock-up to improve that, and this region of the design. I think some people are less happy with, I guess, the bug eye look, the round headlights. And I think that is really a 1950s aesthetic, and it's here to stay. I think in the 50s, they were mandated that they had to run a particular size round light. And some cars did it really well, some cars did it reasonably awkward, but they all had that sort of round headlight look. And I think if we want something that really reflects the 1950s and not something towards the 60s where they've got a bit more fared in, we have to keep that.
Yep, and I think everyone has a different opinion on aesthetics, but at the end of the day, if you build a car for everybody, you build a car for nobody. So I think it's important to stick to those design decisions early on and compromise and adapt where necessary. But things like the headlights, I think, are here to stay, as you've said.
Yeah, I think Jeremy and his mentioned that, well, the Porsche did actually have them fed in very early, just put a little bit of slope on the headlights. Definitely consider that. If I can't make it work with the more upright headlights like the Austin Healey, then we'll probably do it a bit more like the Porsche, but I think we can make the upright headlights work. I'm actually keen to do a little bit of mock-up around the headlight area and maybe build some of the bodywork, maybe 3D print it, just to see about getting that aesthetics, what it looks like in the full scale rather than just on a computer.
And you can see some of the work we've started to do with that in the corner here.
This sort of area here. So we actually want to try and do some of that profiling that we're seeing in the car models in real life to get an idea of how do the curves look at the full scale, because things don't look quite the same. Even the 3D printed models look different to when the models are on the computer. So seeing something at full scale will give us an idea for how those curves are actually working. We're not car designers in terms of graphics car design, industrial car designers, but we enjoy the process. So we're not going to be absolutely hitting out of the parts. Things like the N1A that's come out recently, that's a beautiful car based on the Nichols N1A. That's a beautiful car from, I guess, based on those cars from the 60s. Those sort of stunning designs, we'll be really happy if we get anywhere close to that. And then if we really, really stuff it up, I think we just have to build another one.
Start again.
Yeah, maybe then we go towards go from the 50s to 60s or 70s. What's your favorite era?
Maybe the 90s. That's where all the good cars were made, Dr. Kevin.
The 90s. Yeah, absolutely. Harley loves the 90s. But you're more like Autobahn bombers, that sort of thing.
Well, the 90s gave us the McLaren F1.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite cars of all time.
I think the best sports car of all time.
Hard to debate. Mr. Bean had one, it's good enough for me.
I don't think we're ever going to pull off something like a McLaren F1, but I think we're actually keen. We want to get this project done, but I don't think this is going to be the end for us. I mean, this isn't the first project that we've worked on together.
I hope not.
And I don't think it's going to be the last. So stick with us. So if these are videos that you enjoy watching what we've got to show, then please like and subscribe to this. And if you want to support the channel directly, we do have a Patreon page. We put a little bit more information on that as we're going. So things like the mock-ups, we normally show some ongoing pictures every now and then. Once we've made a little bit of progress on something, we'll put something up on Patreon and do a short post, or we might share some documents that we're developing on Patreon as well. And we're trying to increase what we're doing there. So we're still going to show all of this information eventually on YouTube, on this channel, but we do get it there a little bit early on Patreon. So if you're interested, otherwise feel free to just watch the videos, and hope you're enjoying them.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for your time.
100%. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool as.